Are we on? Okay. We're back again today, believe it or not. We're really pushing through here. We're going to finish chapter 14 today and possibly go on to chapter 15, okay, which would be, as far as the orally transmitted teachings is concerned, the first half, okay, because it really doesn't consider the part 2 is chapter 16 and on, even though there's 14 and 14 chapters. So going on to page 115 of the record of the orally transmitted teachings, chapter 14, peaceful practices, 5 important points. And you remember from yesterday or from the previous video when we were on the encouraging devotion chapter, it was like going through all of these difficulties, never being, thrown off the course of the vow, that sort of thing. Okay, now he's going to say point 1 concerning the peaceful practices, because this is all beautiful, lovely stuff here, okay? It says, the record of the orally transmitted teaching says on page 115, concerning the peaceful practices of the Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law and the practices carried out by Nichiren and his followers now in the latter day of the law, you should understand that when one practices the Lotus Sutra, the Daimoku, under such circumstances, difficulties will arise. And these are to be looked upon as peaceful practices, because we look at them from the perspective of the deeper reality that everything that we encounter that's difficult or an obstacle or whatever we want to call it rather than something wonderful, okay? It's, number 1, a means for us to diminish our existing karma. We mitigate that karma. And secondly, we are not affected because we always, in the end, if we keep going, we always win. All right? Mm-hmm. So, and that's why they're looked upon as peaceful practices. Point 2 on these difficulties. Point 2, on the passage, next the Bodhisattva or Mahasattva should view all phenomena as empty. Okay, so should view all phenomena as empty, that being their true entity. They do not turn upside down, do not move, do not regress, do not revolve. They are like empty space without innate nature. Beyond reach of all words, they are not born, do not emerge, do not arise. They are without name, without form, without true being. They are without volume, without limits, without hindrance, and without barriers. Now he's talking about, again, this should view all phenomena as empty. And in stating that, what he's basically saying is that in terms of the philosophy that's being discussed here, non-substantiality is the place where everything started, okay? And then we manifest into the Sahe realm, or into the realm of the phenomenal realm, the 9 worlds plus enlightenment, okay, the 10 worlds. But non-substantiality is the basis of everything, because everything started from Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Therefore, it started in a non-substantial initial phase. It's causal, all right? So, should view all phenomena as empty, that being their true identity. So that being their true entity. He's already mentioned that previously, that our true entity is non-substantiality. That's where the original state exists. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says this passage lists the 18 aspects of emptiness. The substance represented by the 18 aspects of emptiness is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It's not a phenomenal realm. The 9 worlds that we live in is the phenomenal realm. Non-substantiality is not a phenomenal realm. And nothing in non-substantiality has any of the, it has a true entity. That the true entity is the fact that they're non-substantial. They do not turn upside down, do not move, do not regress, do not revolve. This is nothing more than karma that affects the state in which we exist in non-substantiality, okay? They are not born, you're not born into emptiness, you're not born into non-substantiality, You do not emerge from non-substantiality. You do not arise from non-substantiality. You are without name in non-substantiality because you have no form in non-substantiality. The temporary gathering of the five components have been separated without true being, because now you're part of the phenomenal realm. You are part of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo at that point in time. Okay, they are without volume, without limits, without hindrance, and without barriers. Okay, so every one of the 18 aspects is a description of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay, so everything I just said in point 2, those 18 negations or those 18 aspects of emptiness or non-substantiality are, in fact, all a description of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the law, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the source of all things. Point 3, on the passage, if he asks difficult questions, he should not reply in terms of the law of the lesser vehicle, the Hinayana. He should explain things solely in terms of the great vehicle, Mahayana, so that the people will be able to acquire wisdom, embracing all species. Okay, wisdom embracing all species is the wisdom to perceive that all species are actually of the same source, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. So on page 116, the record of the orally transmitted teachings, going on to explaining point 4, his explication. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, when one is refuting slanders of the law, one should not use the provisional teachings in an attempt to enlighten them. The wisdom embracing all species is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. All refers to the 10,000 things, and the wisdom embracing all species, refers to the wisdom underlying all the different species of the 10,000 things, which is Myoho Renge-kyo. Or again, we may say that the wisdom embracing all species, this is a single mind within us all. This single mind is the one great entity embracing all the 10,000 phenomena. You should think about this. So again, it's theoretical until our mind embraces and perceives it. Okay, that's what a Buddha does. A Buddha embraces and perceives the truth. All right, so he's saying again, or again, we may say that the wisdom embracing all species is the single mind within all of us, because in reality, our concept and understanding of non-substantiality only occurs in our reward body, okay? Or the mind that's able to perceive the truth, okay? And so the single mind is the one great entity embracing all 10,000 phenomena. The single mind of Buddha. You should think about this. Okay, because all of us have the same original state of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. We all are eternally endowed with the 3 bodies. Okay, that makes us already Buddhas exactly as we are. That's why he says the single mind is the one great entity of the truth, embracing all the 10,000 phenomena, the variations of that law being expressed in different ways, plants, animals, human beings. Point 4. On page 116, on the passage, after I have passed into extinction, if there are monks who are able to expound this Lotus Sutra of the wonderful law, their minds will be free of jealousy and anger, of all worry and hindrance. No one will trouble them, curse or revile them. They will know no fear, no attacks by sword or staff, nor will they ever be banished. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, this passage of the sutra states that the bodhisattvas of the theoretical teaching will not suffer any attacks by sword or staff. Of the theoretical teaching he's talking about. Get it? He's making a differentiation, okay? In the encouraging devotion chapter, the previous chapter, speaking of the votaries of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law, us, the bodhisattvas of the earth, it says, there will be many ignorant people who will curse and speak ill of us and will attack us with swords and staves. It also says, again and again, we will be banished. But in the present chapter, it says that these troubles will not occur. This is because the encouraging devotion is speaking of those who carry out the practice of shakabuku, method of the practice of the shakabuku method in the latter day of the law, while the present chapter is speaking about those who carry out the practice of shoju method in the middle day of the law. They don't reveal Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. It's not time for it to become manifest. Understand? Point 5, on the passage. So chapter 13, or chapter 13 is talking about us bodhisattvas of the earth. And chapter 14, as I'm reading it right now, which is called Peaceful Practices, is talking about those of the people that don't have the obstacles because they don't have Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and in the absence of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, they have no manner to actually attain Buddhahood in their present form. It's theoretical Ichinen Sansen. That's the difference. We're actual Ichinen Sansen, and that's why we face what we face and validate the fact that we are Buddhists exactly as we are, rather than just saying that we are. Point 5, on the passage, if they are in a settlement or town, or in a quiet and deserted place, or a forest, or a forest, and people come and want to ask them difficult questions, the heavenly beings day and night will, for the sake of the law, constantly guard and protect them, and will cause all listeners to rejoice. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, as for the votaries of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law, the heavenly beings will surely guard and protect them. The law referred to in the words will, for the sake of the law, constantly guard and protect them, is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, so that was very understandable and very quick for us to go through 5 points. So that's why I'm going on to chapter 15 now, and I will finish today's video with chapter 15, which is a little bit long and a little kind of complex too. It's just 1 point, but it takes a long time to talk about it. Chapter 15, emerging from the earth, one important point. Point 1, on the passage, among these bodhisattvas were 4 leaders. The first was called superior practices. The second was called boundless practices. The third was called pure practices. And the fourth was called firmly established practices. These 4 bodhisattvas were the foremost leaders and guiding teachers among all the group. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says this chapter, emerging from the earth. Okay, got it. This chapter, emerging from the earth, is devoted entirely to matters pertaining to the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching, those who were taught and converted by the Buddha and his true identity. And there's an asterisk there. It says the Buddha and his true identity is the Shakyamuni described in the lifespan chapter as the Buddha who attained enlightenment in the inconceivably remote past, which is not Kuan, though. It's numberless major world system dust particle kalpas. The term is contrasted with the Buddha in his transient status, which indicates the Shakyamuni who attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree in India. So the distinction that's being made is not like Shakyamuni, the king of the kings. It's basically qualifying that what he taught as the teacher of the law Shakyamuni that attained Buddhahood under the Bodhi tree. Okay, all the provisional teachings are based on that. It's not until this teaching right now in these next 2 chapters he qualifies, no. It's not until the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra that he says, no, not in these more than 40 years have I yet revealed the truth, okay? Right. So he's basically saying that he's talking about the bodhisattvas of the earth in the story of the Lotus Sutra, in the text of the Lotus Sutra, okay? He's not talking about the bodhisattvas of the earth in Mappo. All right, please do understand that. All right, so I'll say it again. This chapter, emerging from the earth, is devoted entirely to matters pertaining to the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching, the latter 14 chapters of the Lotus Sutra, those who were taught and converted by the Buddha in his true identity, the enlightened Shakyamuni that numberless major world system dust particle kalpas ago attained Buddha or started practice the bodhisattva way. Okay. The action carried out by the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. This is referred to in the chapter Sho, advocating in the compound Shodo, or advocating and guiding. The character Do signifies that they will lead and guide all living beings of the country of Japan to the pure land of the holy mountain Eagle Peak. As for the guiding teachers of the latter day of the law, okay, which is the true essential teaching, the term teachers can only be applied to the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching of the latter day of the law, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay? In explaining the identity of the 4 great bodhisattvas, and do you understand the distinction that I just made there? Okay, you don't. Let me clarify it. Again, this first part of point 1 is talking about the difference from a perspective of the teaching of the Buddha that attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, okay, as though that was the first time he had ever attained enlightenment, versus the Buddha that he reveals then himself to be in chapter 15 and 16 and beyond. Again, don't forget the 1 chapter and 2 halves of Shakyamuni's teachings is the last half of the emerging from the earth chapter, which is the 15th chapter, the whole 16th chapter, and the first half of the 17th chapter. Okay, so what he's talking about is he's making a distinction in three different references to Buddha. He's talking about the Bodhi, the Buddha, Shakyamuni that attained Buddhahood under the Bodhi tree, Shakyamuni who attained Buddhahood numberless major world system dust particles kalpas ago. And since we're reading this now in the latter day of the law, and the Daishonin's explication is based on the latter day of the law, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo exists now as he's speaking of this. He's now referring to the essential teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And that's why it's confusing, because it's the first 14 chapters in the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra and then the essential teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay, that's what I just went through in that first full paragraph. Going on page 118, I just finished. The term teachers can only be applied to the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching. Okay? In explaining the identity of the 4 great bodhisattvas described here, volume 9 of Supplement to the Words and Phrases, following the explanation given in volume 9 of Words and Phrases, says, okay, so Supplement to the Words and Phrases is not Myolo, it's somebody else. And Words and Phrases, obviously, is volume 9 of Words and Phrases would be Tentai. Says, the 4 leaders described in the sutra passage here represent the 4 virtues. Superior practices represents the virtue of true self. Boundless practices represents the virtue of eternity. Pure practices represents the virtue of purity, and firmly established practices represents the virtue of happiness. There are times when a single person possesses all 4 of these principles. To transcend the 2 types of death, birth and death in the 6 paths and birth and death in the higher realms, is known as superior practices. So to transcend birth and death in the 6 paths, where it's an endless loop, you never are able to ever get to the point where you learn about Buddhahood. All right? And to escape that and go into is known as birth and death in the higher realms is known as superior practices, okay? To go beyond the 2 opposing views that life is cut off after one existence, temporary existence, or that it is eternally the same, non-substantiality, you know, where non-substantiality is the eternal nothingness, okay? Is called boundless practices, because one overcomes the 5 categories of illusions and entanglements, and it has an asterisk here. These are the same 5 types of abiding earthly desires explained in footnote on page 36, because you could go back 80 pages and you'll see what the boundless, the 5 types of abiding earthly desires are. So that because one overcomes the 5 categories of illusions and entanglements, or the 5 abiding earthly desires, that state is designated pure practices. And because one is as perfect in virtue as the Buddha who attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, that is named firmly established practices. Now, when Nichiren, now that's all been an explication off of Words and Phrases and Tentai and Shakyamuni. Nichiren and his followers, who now chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, are all followers of these bodhisattvas who emerged from the earth, okay, which are just characteristics of the bodhisattvas of the earth of the present time. Again, one may say that fire is that which burns things, and hence it corresponds to superior practices. Water is that which purifies things, and hence it corresponds to pure practices. Winds is that which blows away dust and grime and hence corresponds to boundless practices. And the great earth is that which nourishes plants and trees and corresponds to firmly established practices. These are the respective merits of the four bodhisattvas, the respective merits of those four great bodhisattvas. Though the practices of the four bodhisattvas differ from one another, all are in effect the practice of Myoho Renge Kyo. All are in effect Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. These four bodhisattvas dwell in the lower region. Therefore, the commentary Words and Phrases, Volume 9, says that they dwell in the depths of the Dharma nature of non-substantiality, the ultimate region of the profound source, the original state of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. The lower region is where they live and abide, and the lower region represents the principle of truth. Supplement to the Words and Phrases says, which was just referred to here on the previous page, says, the lower region is described by the master Tao Xing as the place where one abides in the principle, Ri. What emerge and become manifest from this dwelling in the principle are referred to as actual events, G. That's coming out of non-substantiality into the middle way, the temporary existence of the middle way. Again, the record of the orally transmitted teaching says in the middle of page 119, says that of all the 1,000 plants and 10,000 trees in the world, there are none that are not in essence bodhisattvas who emerge from the earth. Thus we may say that the bodhisattvas who emerge from the earth are the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching. The word essential or original represents the merits handed down from the past of numberless major world system dust particle kalpas ago, the merits that are without beginning or end. And so what he's really referring to is Kuan Ganjo here. Again, the record of the orally transmitted teaching says that all of the 1,000 plants and 10,000 trees in the world are none other than, in essence, bodhisattvas who emerge from the earth. So everything is a bodhisattva of the earth. It couldn't be that were it not for Nam Myoho Renge Kyo and the teacher that teaches that principle. Okay? Thus, what we may say that the bodhisattvas who emerge from the earth are the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. All right? Because he just talked about aspects. He didn't talk about karmic entities. He didn't refer to anybody that did anything. Okay? The word essential or original represents the merits handed down from the past of numberless major world system dust particle kalpas ago, when this was originally practiced by Shakyamuni, the merits that are without beginning and without end, because they are in fact Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. These bodhisattvas are possessors of the essential or original law. These bodhisattvas are possessors of the essential or original law. It says that these bodhisattvas are possessors of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. They're the original possessors of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. The essential law. The original law is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. So I've put that in a couple of times because I know what this says. Okay, so he's now saying it to make it clear. The original law is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, so all bodhisattvas all encounter Nam Myoho Renge Kyo because Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is how they attain Buddhahood. Okay, so they have to go through that point. Do you understand? When they manifest Buddhahood, that means that they've already met Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. They don't meet Nam Myoho Renge Kyo after they've attained Buddhahood. This is what allows them to attain Buddhahood. These bodhisattvas are possessors of the essential or original law. That's always original, always is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. The original law is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. This daimoku, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, is something that is without exception possessed by the bodhisattvas who emerge from the earth. So it doesn't matter when they emerge. If they emerge from the earth in chapter 15 of even the Lotus Sutra from, the time of when Shakyamuni was preaching it, they are still bodhisattvas of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, is what that's qualifying, is something that is without exception possessed by the bodhisattvas who emerge from the earth. Okay, so the bodhisattvas that are described emerging from the earth are all Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come once, okay? But it is not possessed by the bodhisattvas of the theoretical teaching, those who were taught and converted by the Buddha in his transient status, like chapters 1 through 10 or 11. From the substance of this original law is derived the function. From the substance of this original law, so from the substance of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, is derived the function that is propagated as the practice of concentration and insight. That's all the Makashikan really was Nam-myoho Renge-kyo being discovered, and is called the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, even though in the absence when the Makashikan was written by Chentai, or by, revealed by Chang'an from Chentai, the 3,000 realms were still only theoretical because the original state had not yet been qualified. Okay? Now, he's just qualified it here. He says, the Daimoku is something, okay, what did I just say? I read it somewhere. He says, the original law is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, period. Okay? That's an all-encompassing statement as a reference to everything else that is said. Whenever he's talking about this original law, he's talking about the Daimoku. From the substance of this original law, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, is derived the function that permeated the middle day of the law when there was still benefit and power being derived from practicing the Lotus Sutra, okay, the 28-chapter Lotus Sutra, the theoretical 14 chapters of the first 14 chapters of the Lotus Sutra, which was already explained in Peaceful Practices, that this like no problem thing is for those guys, because they are not bodhisattvas of the earth. All right? They're not original disciples. They're theoretical. Okay? That's theoretical Ichinen Sansen, is that all they could attain. All right? Who were taught and converted by the Buddha in his transient status. From the substance of this original law is derived the function that is propagated as the practice of concentration and insight, the Makashikan, and is called the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. From Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is Ichinen Sansen. Okay? In effect, all the explanations given by the great and ordinary teachers are directed toward propagation of this function of the wonderful law, to bring forth the truth of the fact that we're all eternally endowed with the three bodies, everything. The accepting and upholding of this original law, which is what we're trying to do as bodhisattvas of the earth, expressing it in the latter day, the accepting and upholding of this original law is expressed in the single word belief or faith, because that's what allows us to get to this point and read it the way I'm reading it and understand it the way I'm explaining it. All right? The accepting and upholding at the bottom of page 119, the accepting and upholding of this original law is expressed in the single word belief or faith. The single word belief is the sharp sword with which one confronts and overcomes fundamental darkness or ignorance. The commentary, Words and Phrases, says, belief means to be without doubt. You should think about this. The record, this is page 120, the record of the orally transmitted teachings, part 1, ends here. The first day of the first month of the first year of Koan, of the Koan era 1278, cyclical sign, Tsuchi Inoue Torah. Okay, so where are we at in time?
28 minutes.
That's it then. We'll go on to the record of the orally transmitted teachings, part 2, when we see each other next time. Thank you very much.